Jack Ma is one of the world's most well-known businessmen. His company, Alibaba, is one of the biggest companies in the world. But the road to wealth and success was far from easy for Jack. In this video, we will go through how Jack went from poverty and being a teacher to creating and running one of the biggest companies in the world and changing the landscape in China forever. Jack Ma, or Ma Jun, was born on October 15, 1964 in Hangzhou, located in the southeastern part of China. He and his siblings grew up at a time when communist China was increasingly isolated from the West, and his family didn't have much money when they were young. Ma was scrawny and often got into fights with his classmates. But in 1972, Jack Ma's life would change forever when the US President Richard Nixon, as the first president in 25 years, visited China and Hangzhou, Mao's hometown. So when China opened up for tourism, Hangzhou became a tourist mecca for Westerners. As a teenager, Ma started waking up early to visit the city's main hotel, offering visitors tours of the cities in exchange for English lessons. One of the tourists thought Ma should call himself Jack, which he started doing when meeting foreigners. Without money or connections, the only way Ma could get ahead was through education. After high school, he applied to go to college, but failed the entrance exam twice. Frustrated, Jack started looking for work, but received dozens of rejections. I even went to KFC when it came to my city. 24 people went for the job, 23 were accepted. I was the only guy, he said. After a great deal of studying, he finally passed on a third try, going to attend Hangzhou Teachers Institute. And even though the school was far from being a top college, Jack was happy, because he had finally found a way out. Ma was a natural with his students and he loved his job. But working as a teacher was short-lived for Jack, because he had decided that he was going to be rich. The first company that Jack started was in 1994, Hangzhou Haibo Translation Agency. The idea of the company was to help Chinese companies find customers abroad by communicating in English. Even though the idea was pretty solid, Jack had no idea how to run a company, and neither did the former students of Jack that he had hired as employees. In early 1995, he went to the US as an interpreter for the government. While he was there, he took the chance to visit some friends from college. One of his friends introduced Jack to the internet. Jack had been told that he could search for anything, so slowly, Jack typed down B-E-E-R, and the result was instant, with thousands of pages with information about beer and different breweries. Jack took some time to look through the result until he took the mouse to the search window and typed in China. But to Jack's surprise, the search window now was almost non-existent. This sparked an idea for Jack, who convinced one of his friends who worked at a web agency that Jack should be able to sell their websites in China. Back in China, Jack started the second company, China Pages. The company would be a portal for Chinese companies to sell their products outside of China. The page would show you information, pictures, and price lists in English for different Chinese companies. But even though the business plan was solid, it was a hard sell as almost no one in Hangzhou had access to computers or the internet. Jack would translate everything about the company by hand and then post the information and pictures to the US-based company. They would then upload the text and images to China Pages, take a screenshot, print it, and send it back to Jack so that he could show the company that the page actually exists. The process was dooming and really slow. But doing this, Jack and his employees slowly but steadily starting to build one of China's first internet companies without an established internet. Even though the internet finally came to China, the mid-90s would be tough for Jack and China Pages. To scale up the operation, they took in a government-owned telecom giant. The deal was supposed to help Jack, but it would end up being catastrophic, as the company outmaneuvered Jack a year later and he had to leave the company. After China Pages, in 97 to 99, Jack took a job at the Ministry of Foreign Trade, but the feeling of missing out on the internet boom was always with Jack. But working for the state, Jack was responsible for building InfoShare, a marketplace where foreign companies communicate with Chinese companies. During this time, he would meet a person that would be a vital contact in the future. When Yahoo's founder and CEO, Jerry Yang, came to visit China, Jack was in charge of showing him around Beijing. The charismatic Jack was able to persuade Jiang to use InfoShare as their official reseller in China. A victory for the government, but an even bigger victory for Jack, as he had befriended one of the most powerful internet entrepreneurs of the decade. In 1999, Jack had decided that he would start his next company, and this time it was going to be called Alibaba. The idea this time was to build a site that would help Chinese factories to find trades outside of China. The portal would be a neutral part in between and create leads for buyers and sellers. Now, if you wanted to work with a factory in China back in 1999, the process was far from easy. The first thing you would do is travel to Hong Kong and get a fixer who would book a tour where you would visit different factories, and when you finally got to the factories, it was not uncommon for people to wonder what you were actually doing there. And if you did find a factory that suited your needs, there was never any guarantees that you would actually get what you asked for. This complex system benefited only the bigger industries and the gatekeepers. Small factories had to make alliance with the bigger factories just to get customers, and the buyers had to pay a lot more for everything because of the middleman. And it was exactly this problem that Jack wanted to streamline with Alibaba. Jack decided that the service would be free of charge at the beginning. We will solve our customers' problems first, and then we can focus on making money. All employees were asked to live as close to the company as possible, so they wouldn't spend unnecessary time getting to and from work that could be spent working instead. They worked 16 hours a day, 7 days of the week, and the salary was very low. Instead, all employees got offered a stock option. This was very important, since 3 competitors had established themselves on the market, and one of them was named the official trading company in China by both the Chinese government and the American. In 1999, Jack Ma, with the help of Joseph Tsai, a new employee with a lot of connections in the VC world, raised $5 million from Goldman Sachs and Fidelity Growth Partner for 50% of the company. Goldman Sachs have since said that they weren't impressed by the business plan or the company, but decided to invest when they saw how dedicated Jack was. And even though the money was small, in comparison to his competitors, it was the fuel that Jack needed to keep going. In its first 6 months, Alibaba attracted 40,000 factories in China to join. But it wasn't easy. Most of the factories had no idea how to use any type of technology, and it was not uncommon for Alibaba employees to have to support the companies with how a computer worked. The idea of Alibaba being free helped its growth substantially, but the company was bleeding money fast, and in the beginning of 2000, they started looking at new investors. During this time, Jack met with SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son. And like Goldman Sachs, Masayoshi have since said that they didn't invest in the company Alibaba, but because of the look in Jack Ma's eyes when he told them about his vision. SoftBank invested $20 million in the beginning of 2000, and everything looked good for Jack and Alibaba going forward. But then, the IT bubble popped. After March 2000, the world switched fast for Alibaba, who went from being hyped and hailed to mocked and alienated. The company was also experiencing growing pain, and failed attempts at making money from additional services made the company losing money fast. It was so bad that at the beginning of 2001, Jack Ma questioned if he should quit his dream and go back to teaching. But instead, Jack forced his company into acid test, and in less than 1 year, 2 out of 3 competitors would fail. But Alibaba, who was able to scale down its business and get control of its growing pain, survived. But in 2003, Jack and Alibaba faced a new issue. eBay had just bought EachNet, the biggest Chinese retail site. For Jack, this was a call for war. He was convinced that if eBay would win the Chinese retail market, Alibaba would be done for good. So in top secret, with a new investment from SoftBank, Alibaba started working on their own retail website called Taobao, which stands for To Search for Treasures. Taobao was released in 2004, and at that time, EachNet and eBay had seen a massive growth and had over 90% of the market in China. But this would change fast. eBay started making changes and couldn't keep their hands out of EachNet. They started making changes to the website to make it look more like their own product. While the West like a website to be more clean, the Chinese users are used to websites being more flashy with blinking Christmas trees. eBay would also move its development to the United States, and when they pushed updates to the site, they would do it nighttime in the US, which would make each net go offline when the consumers in China was trying to use the site. The East End consumers are also different from the standard that eBay was used to in the West. They were used to being able to get free gifts when purchasing items, and they hated any fees. And even though the Chinese department from eBay warned its parent company of the mistakes, they just kept going. With every mistake that eBay did with each net, Jack made two rights, and in the eyes of the consumers, Jack started to become a hero for the retail market. And a year after its launch, Taobao had gained 50% of the market, and eBay started to panic. In a way to save themselves, they tried buying Alibaba, but its $150 million offer wasn't even close for Jack or its investors. In 2006, Yahoo and its founder, who Jack had met a couple of years earlier, Jerry Yang, invested $1 billion into the company. With Jack publicly saying that Taobao would be free for 3 more years, and with $1 billion in the bank, eBay stood no chance, and 3 months after the investment, they left the Chinese market, and Taobao went from 30 million users to 170 million 3 years later. There wasn't even a question anymore who controlled the retail market in China. Today, Alibaba is one of the biggest companies in the world. They survived another economic crash in 2008 and came out even stronger. They continue to grow each year, and on Singles Day this year, they sold for over $38 billion in 24 hours. To put that into perspective, that is more merchandise sold in a day than H&M does in a full year. Jack Ma has become a rock star in China, but have decided to step down from Alibaba to focus more on education. He is the richest man in China with over $40 billion. Alibaba have expanded its business even further, and today they offer services within payment, banking, cloud computer, retail, and business to business, and a lot more. They have over 100,000 employees, and Alibaba Group have over $50 billion in revenue each year. It's safe to say that Jack made his dream come true. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button. I'm doing all of this on my own and in my spare time, so it would truly mean the world to me if you would give me some feedback in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I'll have more videos like this coming out soon.